Welcome to Your Family Dog, a podcast dedicated to helping families love living with dogs. Here are your hosts, Julie Fudge Smith and Colleen Pelar.
Hi, welcome to Your Family Dog. I'm Julie Fudge Smith, and I'm here with Colleen Pelar, and we're going to talk dogs. And what we're going to talk about today is whether or not you should adopt litter mates or two dogs that are close in age, say 3 months and 6 months old. Is there a reason to do that that would be good? Is there a reason why you shouldn't do that? And Colleen and I are both avid fans of Whole Dog Journal, and I think Colleen has an article that Pat Miller, who's a wonderful trainer, a very talented individual, wrote about whether or not you should get two litter mates. And she listed some of the scenarios in which people consider that and the reasons why that may or may not be a good idea. So, Colleen, I think you have that article. Could you give us some of the rationale that people use for getting two puppies at the same time?
I do. I'll put a link in the show notes to this article so people can see it. But the rationales that Pat discusses in the article are ones that I've heard a million times, and I know you have too. Mm-hmm. So one of them is, well, I want to get two puppies so they'll have someone to play with while I'm gone at work all day. And it's a good theory,
yeah.
but if we don't channel our puppies' activities and energies and give them things to do so that they're not just sitting there being creative while you're at work all day, two puppies are going to come up with even more ways of dissembling your house while you're gone than
my husband calls our dogs Trouble 1 and Trouble 2.
Mm-hmm.
And trouble is definitely escalated when you have 1 and 2 together. It's
the social component of it.
Right.
There's someone to pull with, I'll take this end, you take that end. But there's also just, well, I was sleeping, but hey, you're digging in the couch. That looks like fun.
Yes.
So I'll join you. some of that creative idea concept.
That's right.
So the whole idea, if you're getting a dog just to be entertainment for your other dog, that is a concern. And that goes for, someone to keep the dog busy while you're gone, but also someone to keep your dog busy while you're here. Like, I'm too busy to meet all of my dog's needs, so I'm going to get a second one so that they can play with each other. One of the big things we have to think about with any of that is that they're very, very likely to bond to each other more than to you.
Well, especially if they're young. That's the other thing.
Especially if they're young.
If they're less than a year old, and if they're less than a year apart. So if you had like litter mates, or you have one puppy who's 3 months old and one puppy who's 6 months old or 5 months old, they're just much more focused oftentimes on one another than they are on their people. And that's something that needs to be. And so therefore, puppy games rule.
Yes. And from a human perspective, it is often easier to treat the puppies as a set. Like, we'll take the puppies for a walk, and we'll take the puppies to the park, and we'll put the puppies to bed, and so that their life is defined as an experience that's shared, which is a really big risk with two puppies, is that, first off, they're not having their own unique experiences, but also, what does life look like without your sibling or litter mate or, good puppy friend, however that comes out, whether it's actually related dogs or not. If I've only ever gone to the vet with this other dog, and then one day I have to go by myself, will I behave the same? Probably not.
No, probably not. Well, the other thing is, I find too, is that oftentimes the two dogs together are like you have a whole dog. But if you separate them, it's kind of like you have two half dogs, and their own insecurities and neuroses or whatever, anxieties, really flourish. And so people say, oh, I can't separate them. Well, that's a real problem. I had a client once who had two golden retriever puppies who I urged not to get two puppies at the same time, but they did. And I said, okay. Then one of the things you need to really do is make sure that they have time apart from one another and time with each individual person. Because, well, that didn't go real well either. And unfortunately, one of the dogs got quite sick and died. Yeah. And the other dog was devastated.
A mess. Yeah.
A total mess. So they ended up eventually getting another golden retriever, and that did help some. But it was just so poignant to me that this poor dog was completely and utterly lost without his companion. And that's the real danger, because it's hard. When you get two dogs at the same time, it's really hard to treat them as separate units. Make sure that they're not always together. And it's so much easier to take them both out when it's raining than when it's not. And
even with the best of intentions, I think people don't follow through on it when we're talking about it. Like I always tell people, you have to go to the bank and make a deposit. Take one dog with you. Leave the other one home and make it a good experience for both. Like the one home should be having a Kong in the crate and happy, yay, I got a Kong in the crate. And the one riding with you to do the drive-through at the bank is like, yay, I'm riding in the truck with you. But not having this, we don't have that many places we can take a dog where it's safe and easy. If you're going to the library, you're not taking your dog. You have to leave it in the car. That's not really safe to do. So most of our errands we do without a dog. And when there's an errand we can do with a dog, we take them both. Why would you leave one home? And get into this cycle where we really just either take the dogs or leave the dogs. But we can, in theory, see that future date when our dog might be without their canine best friend, but it's really hard to truly imagine it. And so in the case of your client, when the dog was just devastated, that was something that we can kind of predict, that's going to happen. It's sooner or later, that's going to happen. But in some cases, it's so much sooner than you'd ever dream.
Absolutely.
Like your dog could have a long, hard time.
Yes, and that's exactly what happened here. The dog got quite ill as a fairly young dog. I mean, I think it died at 2 or 3. So it was still a young dog, and it was very hard for everybody. And then there's this whole feeling, I think, if something like that does happen, then the owner's like, holy cow, I really should have done this. I really should have done that. And so it opens up so many opportunities for self-recrimination, which we don't really want to impose on people.
Right. And it's not an easy fix. So in the case of your client, it did help to get another dog. But it doesn't always help. You know, like if your best friend moves away and someone moves into your best friend's house, you're not like, yay, the house is now occupied. I have a new best friend. Same as your dog. If we're like, your best friend died and I brought home another dog, doesn't necessarily feel that need for your dog.
That's right. Because each dog, just like every person, is an individual and will have, individual characteristics and personality traits that may or may not get along with your current dog. The other thing that I hear, and I think Ped Miller mentions in this article, is that people say, well, you have 2 kids, and they want to get a dog for each child.
Yeah. I think that's really, really risky. Just on so many levels. Yes. But the first and most obvious level is one of your kids is probably better with dogs. So what could very easily happen is we have 2 puppies who think your older daughter is better. So we're more interested in her. We're more excited by her, all of that. And then the younger daughter is going, hey, wait a second, that's my dog or whatever. And then we get into, are the puppies the same? And have they learned the same things? And are they equally social? But one of the huge, huge risks is not only are the dogs most likely to bond to mom, they're far more likely to bond to one child more than the other, which then gives one kid better relationships with 2 dogs than the other child. It's a challenge.
It is a challenge. It's definitely a challenge. And it could be that one child is just... What I've also seen, too, is that one child is actually a better trainer, but the other one likes dogs more.
Yeah.
And that's a heartbreak when the one who really loves the dogs doesn't have that innate ability to train where her sister or brother does and is not interested in the dogs. And then that seems totally unfair, too.
Yeah, so I haven't had that case. That's even harder.
It is. It's very hard. The other thing I find, too, is that we've talked about, should I get a dog for the kids? It goes right back down to the whole thing. If you want a dog, get a dog. Don't necessarily get a dog for your children to teach them responsibility. I think we did one whole blog or podcast. We'll have to link to that podcast for those of you who are thinking about getting dogs for your kids. Colleen and I will be going to be a total downer. For this
that's
one.
our gift.
That's our gift. That's right.
How to make anything that looks good on the surface be really depressing. 2 puppies, yay! And Julie and Colleen go, no.
I did have a client who got 2 little dogs for her boys and hired me for 6 lessons, but she wanted to do 6 in a row, like 6 days in a row. And that was very hard because we could barely get through anything on the first one and have any time to, practice. But the boys were like, I don't want to do this. I want to go play Legos. And I think the mom really is the one who wanted the dogs.
Yeah.
And it was just, it turned out okay in the end, but it was very difficult because she was getting frustrated with them. And they were like, but we didn't really want to do this. We really wanted to, it's Christmas break. We want to play with our Legos. And so I kind of think if you want 2 dogs, that's okay. But let's think about how we're going to get them and what way it's going to be more effective or efficient for your family. Because, 1 puppy is a lot of work.
A lot of work.
Now
and 2 puppies is more than twice as much.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Just like with kids. Like in theory, 2 kids is easier than 1 kid, and sometimes it is, but I don't think anyone says twins are easier than having 1 child and then having another child 2 years later. I mean, twins is not easy. You're busy. Right. You're always on.
That's right. And you tend to have, twice the house training problems. You tend to have, twice the chewing problems, if not at least, twice or whatever, because 1 urinates, and then one goes, oh, what a great idea. I think I'll go too.
Yeah. As you're scooping puppy number 1 up to run out of the house, puppy number 2 is finding the little
I'll
spot.
Finish for you. Yeah.
So it's a real challenge, but on paper it sounds good. The people will say, well, I want them to grow up as best friends. And I just had a client just a week or so ago in an orientation tell me she's got a 5-month-old dog and she's getting a 9-week-old puppy in a week. And I'm like, your 5-month-old doesn't actually know anything yet because she's just starting training. And she was like, well, I just really want them to grow up as best friends. And yes, I hear you. But the reality is we probably aren't going to do the level of training and management that we intend when we have 2 such young puppies. And you're probably not going to hit the point that you're hoping in your head. Like, before we got on the phone call today, I mentioned that my dog has a couple of behaviors that I just don't really care about anymore. Like he sometimes climbs up and put his paws on my leg and gets up, and I'm like, yay, it's an old dog. I don't care. But I did care when he was younger, and I was really careful about reinforcing what I liked and what I didn't like. But with 2 little puppies all the time, it's much harder to be consistent across the board all the time because it's too much. It's too much. And you have so many decisions you can make in a day, and then you hit a point where you're like, done.
Well, especially if you want to clicker train your dogs. People say, how do I do 2 at a time? I said, you give 1 a Kong and then the other room, and you train 1, and then you switch them out. That's how you train 2 dogs at one time. Yeah. But if you got them together, and one of them sits beautifully, and you click, and the other one's, pulling on your pant leg, he thinks he's just gotten clicked for pulling on your pant leg. Yeah. So, yeah, it can be a lot more difficult. So if you're going to do that, if you are going to get 2 puppies, think about training them, trying some stuff separately, and making sure that each one has a really strong sit and a real strong down before you try and put them together and do it.
Yeah, so, and if you do a group class, try very hard to stand on opposite sides of the room.
Right.
Like we get a lot of families who the 2 dogs, the people want to stand right next to each other with their 2 dogs. And in many cases, if we separate the dogs, one dog is actually okay. And the other dog spends the whole class going, but I'm really too far from my friend. We're like, you need to feel safe and happy and comfortable. And ideally, I'd like them in separate classes, but I recognize that for a lot of families, that's a challenge of scheduling. So if you're taking the 2 dogs to the same class, then as much as possible, try to create separate class experiences so that you're not standing next to each other and you're not, side by side doing everything together.
Right. And if you want them to both be family dogs, then you need to also rotate people.
Yeah.
So what I have done is I've had the same thing, and I put one on one side of the room and one on the other. And then the next week, put the dogs in the same spots because they're comfortable and can work in those spots, and I don't want to add too much, but I switch people.
Mm-hmm.
And I
have switched people where I come hold your leash so that you walk across the room to take your other dog's leash, so that it's not the two dogs are coming together and the people are switching leashes in the middle. I'm like, nope, the dogs are staying separate. I'll hold this dog over here. You run over there and take that one, and then that person can come back over here and take this one.
Right. And it's not unusual because I don't run my classes where dogs spend a lot of time talking to their neighbors anyway.
No. But if they're litter mates or same family dogs, they're still always watching.
They are. They are.
They're like, what are you doing? Are you getting treats too? Oh, yeah, I'm doing that too. Okay. They're just nosier in each other's business when they're from the same family.
Right. I agree. But it's one thing in class is that what I try to tell my owners is that I don't want your dog socializing in class. Because I want your dogs to understand that you can be in the same room with another dog and a whole bunch of other people and still pay attention to my owner. Mm-hmm. And if we allow them to socialize whenever they want, then your training's going to deteriorate. And they're not going to feel like I need to listen to you.
Right.
So, but yeah, you're right. And you always kind of feel like they're looking at going, I wonder, is he getting chicken? Because, I only have, kibble here. What's he getting? I bet he's getting better treats than I am. Mom always gives better treats than Dad does.
That's how it is. It's so unfair when your siblings get the good stuff.
It is. It's just like kids. I think another reason that people get dogs, too, is they think, well, we wanted a second dog anyway, so we might as well get them together. Mm-hmm. And we've kind of gone over why that's not a good idea. If you want a second dog, my rule of thumb is there should be at least a year difference in age, especially with young dogs. When my daughter got her golden retriever, Hudson, I wanted to get a dog, but I waited until Hudson was a full year old.
Yeah.
That was terrible English. Anyway, Hudson was 1, and then I got Bingley. And they were good friends, but Hudson knew he was Emma's dog, and Bingley knew that he was my dog, and they bonded to the people quite strongly. So I recommend that if you're adopting older dogs, right, if you're adopting a dog who's 3, and then you adopt another dog who's 3, that's not that big an issue. It's really when we're talking about younger dogs, puppies, that are less than a year old.
Mm-hmm. But if you're adopting a dog who's 3 and you adopt another dog who's 3 at the same time, you're going to have a lot of the same issues just from the management and am I setting up, that kind of thing. Like, are you going to really train those dogs to the level that you think you're going to train the dogs to? And the reality is you're probably not, because our dreams in our head and our realities so often don't match. So it's a matter of really trying to figure out what works best. So having the other dog for a year or so and getting some routines and getting some habits and getting some patterns, and this is how we do things here before we add a new one in, then it's less chaos, because your existing dog, regardless of whether it's older or younger than the dog you're bringing in, the existing household dog knows the routine, is likely to be able to wait for a minute while you rush the new dog out or whatever other things happen. But really trying to make sure that we're really meeting their individual needs.
Right.
And so often if we get them at the same time, we're meeting the collective needs of the dogs and not the individual needs of this dog versus that dog.
Well, the other thing is, I would also say, too, if you are new to dog ownership, I would recommend one dog rather than 2 dogs at once, because you're going to very quickly feel overwhelmed. And if you get the one dog and you go through a training class and you learn how to train and you get a routine established, then adding the second dog will be much easier than if you try and learn all of this stuff with 2 dogs in the house. Right. So if you are new to dog ownership, please start with one at a time. I think that you'll find that it'll be a lot better. And you may find that one dog is perfectly sufficient and makes you quite happy. Then you might decide, I want a second dog, and that's fine too. But give that first dog a chance and give yourselves a chance to really get comfortable with dog ownership.
The thought that crossed my mind as you were talking there, I absolutely recommend one dog at a time. But for the people who have 2 dogs and 1 person, so that we're looking at, like, I need to go to a training class, but I can't take both dogs because there's just me. In that case, I recommend taking whichever dog you think is more challenging, because odds are you can come home and apply these skills with the dog that you think is easier and be able to make pretty good progress. Some people want to bring the easier one because they feel like they'll be more successful. Like, oh, well, she'll do it better in the class. Well, she'll be able to focus more, so I should work with her. And I'm like, no. Let's bring your challenge. See what we've got. That doesn't mean that there aren't individual challenges to the dog that is staying at home. But if you cannot train, if it's a 1-person, multiple dog household, definitely bring the most challenging dog to class, because probably the most useful information from the trainer will apply to all of your dogs, as opposed to if you bring your easier one.
Right. Or if you can, and are willing to give up 2 nights a week, take each dog to his own class, which would also be good. And besides that, you might get different trainers, so you might get different perspectives. So, which is always helpful. I mean, I think in All About Dogs, when I was there, we all basically taught the same thing, but each one of us had our own style and our own way of communicating. And so getting exposure to a couple different positive reinforcement trainers, one of them may say something that really clicks for you. The other one, the other trainer might have said something the same way but slightly different, and you didn't get it. So that's always helpful too, is if you can afford the time and the money to do it, to take each dog to his own individual class. It's always quite helpful.
Yes, I agree. I just think different trainers sometimes say things we're not always going to resonate with people the same way. So I'm currently taking a Pilates class, and my Pilates instructor, I think, is speaking a foreign language. So she says things that she thinks she's communicating, but if I cannot see her, I am never, ever doing what she's asking. Like, she'll talk about how your feet are being positioned or how your arms are being positioned, and her words and my body are doing very different things. And then I turn around and I look, and I'm like, oh, well, that's another way you could interpret those words. So then I can get myself in position and get myself in alignment. So if you're taking your dogs to different classes, even the same instructor, you may find that when you show up on a different night with your other dog, you're hearing something different, or you're trying something different, or something is being modified. So if you can go to different classes with different dogs, still positive reinforcement, of course. But a really good positive reinforcement class with your dogs, different ones or different experiences, can be very valuable for your learning experience. But you also may just find that there are some things that are confusing to you at times that, hearing it a different way could be helpful.
Yes. Sometimes I'll hear the same thing and I'll go, oh, that's what you meant.
Yes.
Didn't realize that. So, I think that's really good. So is there anything else that we want to mention about the 2 puppies at a time that people might want to consider? If indeed you decide to go down this road, I think, 1, get yourself involved in classes. If you can, take each dog to a separate class, or each of you have to be in a separate part of the class. 2, don't put them in the same crate. Give them each their own individual crates, maybe in different rooms, so that they learn how to be away from one another without it being a crisis. 3, you might want to feed them in separate places or at separate times as well, so that that won't cause any issues. Put one outside to feed, one inside, or feed them at different times. Right now, Buckley Bear gets up early. Brad feeds him about 6, and Bing and I get up at 7. So that works out in our household. I think the other thing is try and think of ways in which you can spend time separately. So if you're doing training at home, give one puppy a tasty Kong in his crate while you train the other one. You can even do that with play. Give one a tasty Kong and put him in his crate, and take the other one outside and play fetch or ball or tug or something with him, so that each dog has a chance to play with each person one-on-one. This is not to say that they never can spend any time together. You do.
Oh, no, of course not.
You do want to have them time together, but I would try and carve out time every day if you can, even if it's for a small period of time, that these dogs are separate and doing something different. So even if you get home from work, everybody goes out and goes pee, and then one gets a Kong and you play with one, and then you switch them out, so that every day these dogs learn it's okay to be away from my pal, and I'm really okay with that. And that also, too, so that the dog forms a bond to you, and not just to you through the other dog, which I think is important.
Yes. And that both of the dogs should be happy during those times.
Yes.
Which is the trick for some people, because this is where people stop doing it. So they're like, yeah, I totally get it. Like, I should walk this dog just by itself and work on loose leash walking. But I can't, because my other dog will cry the whole time I'm gone or scratch at the door. Like, so that's a different problem. We need to fix that problem too. We need to find a way to teach your dog to be happy when left home. We need this to be equally good. They should both be excited. Yay, I'm going for a walk. Yay, I'm staying home with the dog. Yay. Not, oh, I'm the one staying home or whatever.
Right.
And that's a training thing. And that's why people stop doing it. Because what they find is if you're clicker training with one dog in one room and leaving the other dog in the other room, the other dog's crying. Well, we need to fix that.
Right.
We need to find a way to make that other dog happy.
That's right. And if you have two or more people in your household, you can even do two fun things. Like you could have your husband could be in the back, or your partner could be in the back throwing a ball for one dog while you take the other one for a walk. And then, maybe you take the other, then you either switch roles or you switch dogs.
Yep.
And so that each are having a great deal of fun. And in fact, we do that because Bear will tend to sort of bowl Zuzu over when we're playing fetch. So Brad will walk Bear in another part of the park while I'm playing ball with Zuzu. And everybody's happy. So
yeah, just perfect. So every now and then we hear from people who say that either the breeder or the rescue really encourage them to take two at the same time. And that is usually a bit of a red flag.
Absolutely.
So be really conscious of that, particularly a breeder. If a breeder is saying to you, take two puppies at the same time, it's probably not a good breeder. Really, really, really be careful about this, because it just sounds like a great idea. Like, of course, they're adorable. We should get them together. We'll have Bert and Ernie, But no.
No.
You don't really want to do that. You can get Ernie first and then get Bert later. That would be better.
Right, and any breeder who says that, they're not thinking in terms of the what's best for their dogs. And every breeder should be ultimately concerned with what is best for their dog. So that should be a red flag. So I think Pat Miller says run in the other direction if indeed you have a breeder that says that. In fact, I did write a blog. I wrote a series, a 3-part series, how to choose an ethical breeder, how to choose a shelter and rescue, and how to choose your best friend, your new best friend. So we can do links for all 3 of those on the website. It took a lot of time to, especially the one on the breeder, with the shelter and the rescue, to try and give you very specific things to ask and to look for, so you know that you're dealing with a reputable breeder. So
yeah, and there's actually one other piece that we haven't covered here, which is it's not uncommon for 2 dogs adopted at the same time, definitely, especially littermates, to develop some sort of frustration, irritation, aggression issues when they reach adulthood. You're just kind of always in my space. So some of the risks for aggression are same age, same size, and same gender. So if you get littermates, we've got at least 2, if not all 3, of those characteristics, which increase the odds of this, same household aggression situation.
Good point.
We could never dream that when you bring home these 2 adorable little puppies, that one day they might go, you know what? I don't like you. And that you'd be managing that piece too. So it's one other reason to get one dog, train it to the point where you want it, and then choose wisely and add another dog into your home when you're ready to add another.
Right. And when the time comes to add another dog, one of the things you might want to do is talk to your trainer about what kind of a dog should I be looking for to match the personality of the dog that I have. I had a client who had a lovely pit bull mix, great dog, but didn't particularly like other dogs, and she thought she found one that the dog would like, and out of the blue, they were in the backyard, the first dog just turned and aggressed on the little dog, and she said, I can't have this, I can't do that to the dog, and I can't do it to my dog.
Yeah.
So we'll be a 1-dog household. So be keenly aware of the fact that you may need some help in choosing the next dog to make sure that this transition goes well. So,
yes.
All right. I think that wraps it up for 2 dogs. Not a good idea if they're the same age at the same time. In general, not a good idea. So, all right, Colleen, thank you very much, and I will talk to you next time.
Okie doke.
Thanks for listening to Your Family Dog. Got questions? Interesting ideas? Colleen and Julie would love to hear them. Call 614-349-1661 or visit www.yourfamilydogpodcast.com to share your thoughts.
Hey, if you enjoyed the show, could you do us a quick favor? Head over to iTunes or Google Play or Stitcher or wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review. That will help other families find quick and easy tips for enjoying life with their dogs. Thanks!